Okay, welcome to this large system workgroup session with Marna. Marna, thank you for presenting yet another time. The stage is all yours now.
Okay, thanks, Anna, very much. So I'm very happy today to be talking about another zOSMF installation topics. So I think this has been presented before, but what I'm happy about is that this function is now generally available. So that's why I wanted to include it on the agenda here as well. So what about putting an SMPE PTF on with a web browser? Can you do it? Yeah, you can with zOSMF. And actually I said PTF in the title here. It's really any SMPE user mod, any SMPE Sysmod. So my name is Marna Wally, and I work on zOS installation and upgrade, which is formerly used to be known as migration, but now we call it upgrade. So I work on installation and upgrade in lovely Poughkeepsie, New York, although I've been working for home since March. So I'm very happy to be talking to you guys about this topic, which very recently GA'd. So let's get through this, and I want to show you how to install with the PTF with the web browser, zOSMF. But of course, my email is on the cover. So if you guys have any question at all, you just let me know and I can get the answer. Kurt Quackenbush was the lead developer, and actually he did a lot of work with working with Broadcom as well on this one. So Broadcom did, probably the lion's share, a lot of this work with Kurt being on the receiving end and shipping it into zOSMF. So I just wanted to mention, if I don't know the answer, we can get to Kurt, and Kurt can give us the answer if we need it as well. So I wanted to, with that, get started on this new exciting GA topic. I want to give a very brief overview for those that might be just joining us on what zOSMF is. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that because hopefully you already know where it is. Very little information about some software management, and I also want to talk about software update, and we specifically want to talk about the intended users for this function, okay? Because it tends that when we talk about this function, a lot of times people will compare it to the more legacy function of installing fixes with batch, and that's totally fine, not a problem. We'll talk a lot about that, but really the intended user is that you are going to want to put on a Sysmod with a browser interface. So it's the people that want to do that. We'll talk a little bit about how to set up for zOSMF software management. Software update occurs on a software instance. So we will talk very briefly about what a software instance was. If you went to the previous session on how to install a product with zOSMF to give you a software instance, you should already know what a software instance is. So I won't spend too much time on that. And the use cases that we have for installing Sysmods with the browser with zOSMF is corrective, recommended, and functional. So I want to make sure that we go through each one of those scenarios. However, after you start off at the beginning on either the corrective, recommended, or functional path, you'll see that it all merges onto the common path. So we don't need to have to go through each one of the slides for the recommended and the functional, because it looks just like the corrective once you pass that initial point. So we'll talk about that. And then there are some additional features that are available within software update that you might want to know or modify or change or just be aware of. So we'll talk about that as well. Super quick, what is zOSMF? So zOSMF provides a web interface for system programmers so that they can do management of a zOS operating system. Okay, it renders itself through a browser. There's no software that is available on your workstation except for the browser and the network connectivity that you need to your host. And then on the host on the right, you'll see that we have the server. We use we're an application of the WebSphere Liberty web serving capability. And we also have specific plugins for specific functions that we have. That composes zOSMF itself, and then that has a dependency on other ZOS components such as COM server for networking, SAF for our security, and other dependencies for specific plugins like the common event adapter or SIM. SIM stands for common something module. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. And we also have other things like other dependencies for the plugins, like the incident log happens to be one that has a lot of high level of requirements. So those would have other dependencies on other components. This does run on Java version 8, 64-bit, and therefore it is eligible for zip processing. So I just wanted to throw that out. We've included ZOS in the base ever since ZOS 2.2, and as of 2.3, we are assuming that it started because we have automatically started it for you in ZOS 2.3, which is an entirely different topic, but I just wanted to say that we're assuming that we have it there as of ZOS 2.3. All right, enough about the zOSMF in general. Let's look at software management now. Okay, so we have, and I talked about it our prior session, software management. So if I'm logged onto zOSMF and I see these icons on my desktop, I see something called software management, and I see also the new option, which is software update. So I just created this slide in order to compare and contrast between the two, because at least I've answered a couple of times to folks about what's the difference between software management and software update. So software management, if I look over here, this really deploys or installs products, okay? It deploys products that are packaged, such as IBM packages a server pack as a portable software instance. Other vendors also packages a portable software instance, and this is where you would go to deploy that portable software instance. If you do receive a portable software instance from a vendor, this is where you have to go to install it, okay? You can't use the legacy server pack ISPF dialog, for instance. I get that question a lot. You can also deploy previously installed packages through software management. And again, these packages, the portable software instance packages, can be SMP, non-SMP, or both packaged. It doesn't make a difference. Okay, in ZOS, we are remaining SMP packaged. We often get that question too. The non-SMP packages that are packaged as a portable software instance and our software instances, if they wanted to be updated, it is likely that they would use this product replace path through software management. Okay, so if you had a software instance that was non-SMP installable, probably I would assume the likeliness of it being updated would mean another software instance package, and you would go through software management to do that sort of an update of that package. And then, as we mentioned at the end of the last session, there are a myriad of reports that you can run against products and services and everything else, and those all come out of software management as well. So that's this side of the house that you can see here. But what we're going to talk about now is software update, which is a new task which is on the desktop. And software update only can consume SMPE packaged PTFs, or as I said before, I really should say the term Sysmod there. So it only consumes SMP Sysmods, and those PTFs packaging does not have to change. So if I had a PTF today, I could install it either with software update, or I could use my traditional batch, SMP receive, apply, accept in my batch job that I use today. So no packaging changes are required in the PTFs. In software update, we'll talk about the 3 use cases: corrective, recommended, and functional. Okay, and so this is where I would go to install SMP packaged Sysmods, and this is where I go to install products or software instances and deploy and look at reports. Now, these are very much related to each other because a software update has to operate on a software instance, okay, because that's the package it understands. So who is zOSMF software update intended for? We get this question a lot, okay, because a lot of people will look at this. They've installed SMPE PTFs or Sysmods for decades, and now they're looking at this and they say, well, can I do it the old way? And why would, I ever move to this way? Really, software update is intended for the less experienced installer. It's intended to have a common interface where people can use and install fixes in a more guided experience, and something that will be not give them as many errors, okay? Because it's intended that this tooling will actually help correct and fix any problems that they have and not present them with so many challenges that they would have had. So they may not be familiar so much with JCL or with all the intricacies of SMPE. They may be learning them very well, but they may be relying upon someone to help them through this. But for a PTF install, it would really be nice if these people could actually go and put on service onto a software instance. And so this is really where this interface is intended for. But wait, I may have been somebody that's been installing PTS for decades, like I'd mentioned. Can I use software update too? And absolutely you can. If you really would like to try it, you absolutely, and we encourage you to try it. Okay. The interface is a nice capability for both types of users to see what's happening for each other. So if someone's very experienced and they want to go see what the less experienced person is doing for software updates, sure, you can go in there and take a look at it. It's very helpful, and it's meant to be used by both sorts of person. But really, as I said, it's intended to be used by somebody that isn't so familiar or doesn't really want to go through the SMPE, intricacies of the commands and the syntax, and maybe try to understand a lot about JCL to do it. Okay, but at the end of the day, it's still SMP commands that are installing SMP sysmods, and the result is the same. The user mod or the PTF or the sysmod, it gets into the target zone. So I can't tell if a PTF has been put on in a target zone. I can't say which way it happened. I can't say whether it was, the old legacy batch way in JCL or whether they used zOSMF software update. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's exactly the same thing that you have on the system. Okay. All right, so let's look at the setup of software update first. So this is what the icon looks like. And if you've done the setup correctly, you're going to find it on your desktop. So first of all, make sure that you have software management plugin enabled, because this is a new function underneath software management. So if you're not using software management today, you're not going to be able to use software updates. So make sure in your IZU PRM PARM Live member that you do have the ability to have software management enabled. Okay, so check on that one. These are the new recent PTFs that were just issued on 2.3 and 2.4, which incorporate software update into zOSMF. So these are the two PTFs that you're going to want to have installed. And they have a hold action in these PTFs, and the hold action is pretty much this slide. So if you're looking at this slide, it should be familiar with you when you go to put on the PTFs, same kind of hold action. First of all, in IKJ-TSO, make sure as an authorized program you have GIM SMP. Why is that so? Is because software update, this function, runs from a TSOE address space that is started from zOSMF. It does not run as a batch job. Therefore, we need it as an authorized program in IKJ-TSO. A lot of people already have this today, so just verify that you've got it in IKJ-TSO as an authorized program. There is, of course, as with everything in zOSMF, you have to have access to use it. So if you see here, this is the profile in class ZMF APLA. Okay, it's a rather long profile, but what it is this is the software update access to this new function. Okay, so permit read access to this new profile in class ZMF APLA. And then launch away. If you do all that above, stop and restart the server, you might have to. Log on and see if you have software update on your desktop. If you don't have it on your desktop, and this has happened a lot, go down and look at this App Center folder on the lower left of your desktop. And if you don't see it on your regular desktop, it probably is in the App Center. I've seen that for a lot of the new functions within zOSMF as they are added into the backbone of zOSMF. You stop and restart the server. I don't see them on the desktop. You got to go down to the App Center and look for them. So if you still don't see it, go into the App Center and chances are that it is there. Okay, so that's how you settle this stuff up. Okay, so let's start again from the basics here. What's a software instance? Because software update has to operate on a software instance. And as I said before, when we were talking about installing software instances at the other session, this is real the basic building block of what all software management is turning out to be now, is this software instance. So I have to operate on that software instance. So this slide should look familiar. I'll go through it very quickly. Software instance is composed of either SMP installed or non-SMP installed products, and it can be a combination of both of them. So on the left, I see here that I have some SMP installed target DLibs, and I'm including the CSIs, of course. And then I have some non-SMP managed data sets. These might be my own exits or other modules that I might have that are associated with this product on the left. So here's an example of a software instance. And on the right, here's another example of a software instance. It's just a group of data sets, whatever I decide to do, whatever I decide to name and put them together and group them together in something called a software instance. It contains sequential PDS, PDSE, VSAM, ZFS, HFS. It's just any kind of data set that you can put into a group and give a name to that group. Okay, so that's what a software instance is. And it behooves you today to define existing products and groups that you have on your system into a software instance. So we are going to talk about how to do that. So let's look at the software update topology. So this should also be a little bit familiar if you're familiar with software management topology as well. So here I am here, and I'm logged onto my browser, communicating with HTTPS to my zOSMF. I'll call it the primary server because that's where I'm logged on. I'm in a sysplex here. I have system 1, system 2. And this zOSMF system has information in the repository. This is called the user dir in zOSMF, and this is where all the hardened data is stored for zOSMF. And I am having a software instance, let's say locally, which might be instance X. I can also communicate with another zOSMF remote server. And on that system, I might have a software instance Y, and I could also communicate to a third sysplex if I wanted to. And on that system, I might have called that target software instance Z. So where could I put a software update? Where could I put where's the software instances I could install and update to? It can be X, Y, or Z. Okay, and this is very powerful because that means that I can sit from this browser, this instance here, logged on to zOSMF, and I could put a SMPE PTF on this system remotely. Okay, so it's a very powerful thing that you can do, but we can do this because we have the knowledge of where software instances are. We have the knowledge because we have zOSMF has hardened into its repository what these software instances are and where they are. I can communicate this zOSMF to the remote zOSMF systems, and that builds up a very strong topology that I can have with this. So this is what's making this technology very powerful today. And that's why, again, another reason why we encourage you to use it. So we need to take a little bit of a step back. Let's say I have a lot of software on my system today, and I want to assign a task to, let's say, a newer person on ZOS to install a PTF. And they're going to have to put that PTF on a software instance, but I have to have the software instance defined for that person. So let's look at how I can define a software instance today. So there are a couple methods that I could do that. So I could do it interactively with software management, and I'll show you how to do that very quickly. It probably takes longer for me to explain it than it takes to do it. So you can do it much faster than I can even take to explain it. You could also do it programmatically if you wanted to do it within a REST API. I think probably the first time through, people might try to do it interactively through the GUI to make sure that they get it right. Or you could have a new software instance because you've installed a portable software instance, which I described in the prior session. And in the last step of laying down that portable software instance, you now have a software instance and you give that a name. And that could be a way that you define a software instance as well. Okay, so let's very quickly go through how to define a software instance, because the case is I have an existing system today. Let's say I have a ZOS 2.4 system and I want to put a PTF on 2.4. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to do. But I have to get 2.4 defined as a software instance. So within software management, I click on software instances. On the action pull downs, I go to add. By the way, I want to mention here, I had a question at the last session on how do I look at Sysmods that are installed throughout my entire enterprise. What you would do is you would click on the list of software instances that you want to look at. Could be all of them. If you have 100, you could click on 100 or click at the top and get all 100 included. Actions, and then see where it's grayed out here, maintenance reports. Under maintenance reports, you would see where to install that software if that PTF has been installed. So it was a little side note, but let me continue back on the main path here. So the main path here is I'm going to install ZOS 2.4, PTF for 2.4, and I got to define it as a software instance first. So I go into software instances. Under actions, I say add. Okay, and you're going to get a little wizard, and it's going to guide you through the steps that you need to define. Okay, here is an example. Oh, it looks like here I had IMS version 15. I already defined it. It doesn't matter. I could use IMS 15. I could define ZOS 2.4. I would spend the time today defining software instances for software that you already have so that you can use software update. Okay, so let's move to the case here. I'm in this little mini wizard and I want to give it a name. This might be the hardest part of making a software instance, is to defining what the name is. So give it a name, whatever you want, give it a description. And again, my personal recommendation is to put the service description either in the name of the software instance or in the description, because sometimes it's hard to tell what the service level might be unless you put it in there and I can visualize it right away. So I give it a name, and then I give it a description, and then I click on next. And then it says, okay, where is the software instance? Because remember, I have to keep a track of that within my repository information. So I say what system it's in, and it says, okay, do you have a global zone? Now remember, you don't have to have it SMPE installed. It could just be a group of data sets. In my example here, it is SMPE installed. So I start typing and I get a little bit of a type ahead, which is nice. And then I just click on next. Okay, you know what I have now? I have the choice of what target zones do I want in that software instance. So in the prior session, we had a customer that had a global zone with many, 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 many target zones, which is fine. So you could have a software instance of a subset of those target zones, or you could have an entire software instance of the entire set of target zones. Is really your choice on what you want to do. I would recommend that you put in a software instance the target zones that you're going to want to deploy together. So if you're going to want to deploy 200 target zones together from, development to test to production, then put it all in one software instance. But really, if you're in scenario in the framework you have within your enterprise where you have, let's say I only deploy one of those target zones through each of those environments, it would probably be best for you to make one software instance with that one target zone. You can still keep it up at the global and have, target zones all underneath that one shared global, totally fine. But that would be probably the way that I would structure it. So in this example here, I only have one target zone inside of this global. Okay, not so exciting. So I would click on it and then say next. So what I have now is a global and a target, and I have a name of that software instance. And there you go. There it is. I can see it on my list of software instances, and voila, there it is. And SMPE now, because it knows what the target zone is, knows the global, knows the target zone, it can then go know all of those data sets that are underneath it. So it really, you can, like I said, it takes longer for me to describe how to create a software instance than it does to actually do it. Okay, so you should be able to go through your enterprise now and define software instances very quickly. And you can add non-SMPE data sets to the software instance if you want. You can modify these software instances if you don't get them exactly right. Okay, so that's it. You've got a software instance. Now you're ready for action. So let's go. Now we're ready to really start with software update. Okay, so software update. It's the generic way that we talk about applying a PTF. So remember the intended user that we're going for. We're going for the person that is not so experienced, maybe doesn't know SMPE very well, doesn't even maybe know what a PTF exactly is or what it stands for, may not really even be familiar with what an apply or an accept is, probably definitely not really familiar with JCL. So that's why we're using more generic terms within software update. So we have the icon that's called software update, and then the software update, we're talking generically about the ability to put on a fix or a Sysmod or a PTF. Okay, so within software update, like I keep mentioning, we have 3 use cases that this less experienced person would need to go through. And it's intended that they would understand what their task is. Do they want to put on a corrective fix? So this is only I'm putting on a couple of fixes because I have a problem and the service center has said, hey, Mary, go install PTF UI 12345 and your problem will be fixed. So Mary comes in here, she's got her software instance already defined, she selects it, I want to do a corrective install, and the use case is she wants to put on PTF UI 12345. Okay, another use case is recommended. So this would be a case where I'm going to put a lot of fixes on. Okay, IBM or other vendors, they have recommended updates and they have used assigned statements to have source IDs for PTFs. And again, I'm using very in-depth terminology that probably the person we're intending it for doesn't know about assigned statements or source IDs. But the intention here is that I'm going to put on recommended fixes that a vendor tells me, and I'm going to put a lot of them on, and that would be the use case for that particular path that they're going to use. And the third use case is functional, meaning I'm going to buy a new Z15. Let me put on the PTFs that I need for the Z15, and that would be down the functional path. And for those that are more experienced with SMPE, we're talking here about fix cats. okay? But we'll see when we get there. So we have 3 distinct use cases that we can see here. Whoops. And so we'll go through each one of these 3. All right. So the process to install software updates is basically similar for all of these use cases that we have. So let me just show you at the top, there is a line of functions that you need to go through, and each one of these functions has to happen for each one of the use cases that we have. Whoops. Sorry, my screen's doing weird stuff. So the first thing we have on this bulleted list of items that we're going to go through, this timeline, is preparing updates. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit in depth about what's happening underneath, but really the intended user should just understand what these terms mean up here. So when you're preparing an update, that means I'm going to start an apply check process where I'm going to start looking at the holds, and I'm going to start seeing if I need to bring in more fixes in order to install the desired kind of fix that I have, okay? So this is kind of the first apply check that I might run against putting on some fixes. The next thing is resolving the holds. So now I'm going to put on, 1 or more fixes, and I have to do something with the holds. So I have to look at the holds and I have to define at this point in time, okay, it's okay if I put on this fix right now. Let's say it had a hold for an IPL and I knew I was going to IPL the system. I can just resolve that right now. But let's say it had a hold for AO, it was automated operations, and I needed to put that on and have that reviewed later by, let's say, perhaps another team after the PTF has been installed. Okay, now I need my automation folks to do something. So that might be, and I'm going to jump way forward on the timeline, review post-installation holds. So I'm going to take some of the holds that I have here, and I'm going to put them into the timeline to be reviewed again later. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do in this first time. I'm going to say, these are okay. I can get rid of these right now. Or this one has a hold. I don't even want to put this PTF on. I can't deal with this one right now. It has an application update that I just can't do. So I'm going to exclude that one. Or maybe another one is that, okay, I'm just going to deal with this one later, AO or something like that. Next step in this timeline is verifying the update. So now that I know what you're going to do with all these holds, I need to run another apply check. Okay, so that's what the verification update one is doing. Pre-install summary. Okay, my apply checks are running okay. I think this is it. Going to show you what I'm going to do. One last look. Everything is the way you want it to do it. Then you move to the next step, installing the update. What is the update? It is the apply. This is where the actual target libraries change on installing the updates. Then I'm almost to the end of the timeline here. I review the post-installation holds I had that I might have delayed from way back here. I now surface those again to the user to say, here's the ones that you wanted to take care of after you got the fix applied. Here's the hold for AO or whatever it is. And then here's just the installation summary that you can see. So for all of the steps on this timeline, you need to go through them for all 3 of the use cases. That's why I spent the time explaining to you what they all are. The person that's installing the update probably just going to see around here. If you're a more experienced user, you can start digging down a little bit in different levels of this in order to understand more. So I wanted to try to explain to both types of people what's going on here. Okay, let me just check that we're doing okay on the chat. Oh, we have something in the chat. Question from Sean. I presume it is pulling the current hold data as you go through the process, correct? Sean, hold on for a second, Sean. It's not, but let me tell you why it's not. Okay, so let me hold on for that for a second. It's a very good question, though. Let's take the first use case, corrective PTFs, right? Support center says, Mary, you need to put on UI 12345. You need to go get it. And let's just, for this point in time, Sean, let's just say that PTF UI 12345 is received in the global zone. We're going to assume that. I'm going to get to that in a second, but hold on that concept. So Mary sits down, launches up zOSMF, goes into software update, this little icon on her desktop. It launches this up. This is the main page that you see here. This is where it all begins. I can see here the list of all of the software instances that I have deployed here. And again, this is one of the reasons why I like to put something about the product or product set name here. And I also like to put something about the recommend or the service level, because as you can see the names here, not super descriptive. That's another reason why I like to kind of name the software instances that I name. It'll tell you what system it's on. I will get back to this description much later in it, and it will tell you the status. This is a software instance that's being deployed, so it's being copied from one location to another. It's locked. I can't put a PTF on while it's being moved. Oh, this one's ready. I could put it on there, and I could see that I have, 4 items, 4 software instances on this particular system. Okay, so what am I going to do now? Okay, in this particular path, I'm going to install Corrective. So my first use case is I'm going to pick which software instance I wanted. Let's say it was this one, and I will see the target zones there. I might have had one target zone. I might have had several target zones. I have to pick one target zone at a time to put the fix on. So I untwist the software instance and I select the target zone that I need. Okay, and if there was many, the person would have to pick the correct target zone that they wanted. And then you just click on Install Corrective. Here is where you would put the PTF names that you want to install, UI 12345. And again, we're going to assume that it's received into the global zone. Hold on for that for a second. And then you just click on the submit button. Notice over here, if you had a long list of PTFs that were corrective PTFs that you wanted to put on, you could upload a list if you wanted as well. It's really intended though that you have, it in maybe a list that you have somebody gave you, or that you just type it out there individually on that enter update name line right here. Okay. Let me just check on the chat again. Okay, we're good. All right, so I'm moving along the timeline now. Okay, I've identified the software updates that I have, and now it says working. So we know what's happening here. It's doing these fixes. It's trying to do an apply check on these fixes. I'll show you the actual apply check command that it's trying to run. And again, updates must be received in the global zone. More on that later. Let's just pause on that one. I know a lot of people like to jump into what happens if it's not received. Okay, we'll talk about that one in a minute, but right now let's just assume that it's been received. So I'm working on this. I'm working on these desired corrective fixes that I'd wanted with the apply check. And then it says, okay, I've got these 2 PTFs that you told me about, and these 2 are ready to go. Okay, what do I do next? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Install Selected. Just an own personal thing. I was always looking for the button to continue down to the lower right here that said Next or something like that. It is not down there. It is in the table header here called Install Selected. And you see that little arrowhead. That's how you continue to the next portion of that timeline. To me, it was a little confusing. We've had a couple of comments about that, but it's just the way that it is. Don't look down here for next. The only thing you're going to find is cancel, so don't do that. You can also see here that you've got 2 fixes ready to go, and that you had 0 that were not installable. So let's say if you had put a third one there and it wasn't installable, it wasn't ready to go, you might see that one on that list there. Okay, so everything looks good. We're going to do the install selected up here. Remember, this is where you find it. You click right here and you move to the next slide. Okay, so hold on, let me go back a second here. Okay, sorry about that. So now we're on preparing updates here. So here we go. We're working some more. We're preparing on the updates. Let's just pause a second. And for those that know SMPE syntax very well, let's look what's happening behind the scenes in zOSMF software update. So behind the scenes, I've got these 2 fixes that I wanted to install. I'm using the group extend keyword, which will pull in requirements that we have. I'm doing a bypass on hold system, and I'm doing a check on this. Okay, because this is a corrective fix. So this is behind the scenes what we're doing on preparing updates. Let me just check on the chat one more time. A question from Elizabeth is, why isn't there a list of received PTFs to choose from the start? That's a really good question, Elizabeth. Let's hold on that question as well. I'm going to give you the really quick answer. The quick answer is that probably, and it is a recommended scenario, that you have more PTFs in your global zone than you might want to install for a corrective one. And so the number of PTFs that you might have received may be too much for this particular corrective install. Therefore, we don't give you a list of ones to receive from the start. mostly because we recommend that everything is in the global zone. Hold on to that for just a little bit. I know that's probably not, there will have disagreements about that, I'm sure, but let's hold on for that one just for a little bit. We do not go and query the global zone, come back to see what's listed in receive status, not applied, and then give you an entire list. That's not how this was designed with the user in mind. Okay, so we've got some holds on those PTFs. What are we going to do? Well, now we go down to this next button that's on the lower right-hand option here. Click on that. And it says, okay, we've got some holds. We're going to show you the type and the reason of these holds. So the ability to do filtering here might be very nice, because let's say I'm going to put on 2 or 3 or 400 fixes within a recommended use case. I know that I might be able to IPL the system, so I may be able to want to just filter on IPL and immediately resolve those holds right away because I know I'm going to IPL, or I don't really care about doc and I want to get rid of those. And so I also might want to look at what are the other types? Are they an error or fixed cat or user or other types of hold types that I have there? So the ability to kind of filter and just see the type of hold you want, I think is going to be very advantageous. We don't really have that capability today with the batch job. You just get the SMP report and you got to figure out which ones are going to be okay and which ones are not okay. But this is kind of a more visual way of being able to control it and release those holds as you want. You can also download information as well, as you see here. So what we're going to do is we're going to, expand on particular ones. Here's a particular PTF here that had a hold IPL. I can read it. I can resolve it right here to click on the little box and it will resolve it right now. You can see there's 3 options that you can select from here. So I'll tell you what each one of these 3 boxes means in just a second. But you can select one or more to resolve at the particular point in time where you have here. So this is usually, as you know, where you're going to put on PTFs and you have to look at holds. This is where you usually spend a lot of time because you got to check whether they're okay to bypass or not. And that's just the nature of the beast, that PTFs have holds, and holds are sometimes a little more complicated. But we're hoping to help that with this filtering and also setting the classification with types and reasons in order to help you a little more. So let's look at these 3 buttons on the bottom here. So when I resolve a hold for a PTF, if I click on this one here, it says resolve hold. What is it telling you? It's telling you that I've looked at the hold. It's okay. I'm going to want to continue with this, and I know I can safely ignore this action. Don't show it to me again later on within the timeline. The second one here is resolve the hold after installation. So this says, I'm going to have to do something about this one later. I still want to put the fix on now, but I want you to remind me about it later. And this is within the timeline where they're going to come and appear again to you. So that's how you get that to happen, is by selecting this middle option. And then there's the third option that says, I can't put this fix on right now. I don't want this fix installed. Maybe I have to even update an application. It might take me a month to do this before I can get this PTF on. For whatever reason it is, I want you to not put this fix on at this time. So take it off your list. Okay, so you got a choice between 3 things here. Okay, so now that you've got, let's say, all of the holds that have been resolved, okay, and you can see here how many you're going to come after installation. So you can see what's coming in the future here, right here. Once you've resolved all of them, then you'll be able to push next, and we're going to continue on the timeline, what we need to have done. Okay, so now I'm moving on. I've got past the hold parts, which might be one of the harder parts we have, but it's just the nature of PTFs and how they have holds. Okay, so now we're going to do another apply check, because remember, I might have excluded a fix before. I couldn't get to the hold of it. I had to take it off my list. So now we have to run another apply check, make sure everything is going to be okay. And we've got to verify that. So we're going to work on that. When that is done, it says it's done. Click on next. And we're going to see a summary saying, okay, this is your pre-install summary. This is the last chance of what we're going to tell you we're going to do before we actually go and change those target libraries. So you can look at this list and you can sort and filter up here. You can see the name and you can see the status of what it is. And it might go on for pages and pages, but you can see here, depending on how many you've had on the requested for the fixes that you're going to be putting on. Okay, so this is the point where you're going to say, this is it, I'm putting these on. Then you click on next. Immediately when you click on X, the apply will happen. So the update to the target libraries will occur right now, and it's working on that. It's doing it. Then the apply will finish. Okay, hopefully everything is good. Hopefully, you didn't get an error in apply. One of the most common problems is you run out of space in a data set. We know that, people run out of space in data sets. Will software update accommodate that? No, it does not accommodate that at this time. We're really on the happy path here. We're assuming that there's enough space in the data set. If you were to, let's say, run out of space in a data set and the apply failure happened, you would be able to probably have to go to a more experienced person, have the data set enlarged, and then continue back on this path again. So we do not accommodate resizing of data sets here. We know that's a requirement. We know it would be nice to do. So it's not doing that here. So we're just assuming the happy path that it will go on fine within the sizes that you have. So you told us to resolve some holds after the PTFs. Now we're going to do that. Here's the holds that you told me to remind you about, and that would be showed here. You just clicked on next. And then here you go. Here's the installation summary that you have. So we can tell you that the update has been completed for that target zone. And here is all of the SMPE output. So it is here for you to save if you like. It is zipped up. You can look at just the holds that you did beforehand. You can look at all of the holds, and you can look at all of the SMPE output if you want. Just put into a zip file, downloaded to your workstation. Okay, so this is where you can have your own personal copy of it, and you can archive it and do it whatever you want to. This would also be something that if you wanted to verify later what happened, this would be a good place to look at the output to see what happened. Okay, so if you click on all the SMPE output, here's the little zip file that you can see that comes from the window machine. It's all zipped up. Here's the SMPE list, out, reports, everything's here in the zipped file. If you open it up, this should be awful familiar to a lot of installers. This is what you can see. You can see the actual apply syntax that was used here. Okay, we're still good on the chat. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move through the other two scenarios rather quickly. Because like I said, once you have a little bit of a difference at the beginning of the scenario, the rest of the timeline goes through exactly the same. Okay, so this would be the case. Let's go back to the primary panel of software update. Okay, and here is all my software instances that I had. I've untwisted one of the software instances I had, and I selected a target zone, and here it is, install recommended. So this is a different kind of path. So immediately after I say install recommended, I'm going to go into an apply check with a source ID. I'll tell you what source ID we're going to use, and we're going to try to find the recommended updates that we want to do an installation of. And again, the updates have to be found received into the global zone. More about that later. Okay, it seems a very popular question. We know it. We've heard this a lot. We've got a requirement that we are looking at. But right now, yeah, the receives, the updates, the whole data, and the fixes have to be put into the global zone so that we have all the latest information on the whole data and that we have the fixes there that we want to install. On a recommended path, what's happening behind the scenes? Well, we're going to try to do an apply check. And the source ID that we're going to use is RSU hyper and PRP in second. So these first four are a list of the IBM recommended updates. This is the source ID that IBM uses for the recommended service updates that we provide to you. Okay, CAR, hyper and PRP is the recommended source ID that Broadcom recommends for its particular product. So we have included that into the source ID list. BMC recommends RSL asterisk, and so for BMC, we have put that on the list of source ID. So what this is demonstrating is that we have within the industry, we have different vendors that have all come together to tag their PTFs with recommended source IDs. And when you have somebody that wants to install recommended, they will install recommended for all of the vendors within the marketplace. Okay, so if it was a target zone, let's say, that just had Broadcom products, we would do, it might not find any of the RSU ones because those would be IBM ones, but it would find the CAR ones. And the CAR ones would be applicable to those Broadcom products. And that would be the path that you would use to install recommended for Broadcom of that product. Okay, so you can see here that we're using the recommended throughout the entire industry when you have that one install recommended button that you use. Now, it is what we have decided to do is if you have a PEPTF, we are not going to install that. Okay, it's going to be automatically and unconditionally excluded so that when you install recommended, you do not install a PEPTF. If it's your desire to install a PEPTF, let's say because you reviewed it and you know that the reason why it's PE is going to be okay, you should use the install corrective method in order to do that, to make sure that goes on. Okay, let me go into the chat for just a second. Sean had a question. So just to be clear, this does not communicate with the vendor at all. Does not go through and query the RSU available and the current hold data, etc. That is correct. You have to have all of the enhanced hold data received into the global zone for this to process. There is no communication at this point in time with software update back to the vendor home base to receive all that in. It is assuming as the starting point that you have already received all of the enhanced hold data and all of the fixes themselves. And that is the starting point of software update. There is no communication back to the home base for the vendor. Okay, another question is, for example, I started installation using SMPE. Let's say I completed receive for a product via the usual SMP process and my teammate wanted to switch back to zOSMF. By halfway, can we start in zOSMF from where we left in SMPE? Good question. Let's get into pausing and resuming within a second. Okay, we'll talk about that one in a second. Sean says, ouch, huge loss. Yeah, we hear you, Sean. We've just GA'd this product. We are looking at doing more functions in the future. We wanted to get this capability out now. We do know that we have in our backlog several items to do this, and we've heard from a lot of customers that one of them is to pull in their latest information. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit more and a little bit of how to get around that. But we have heard that often from customers. Okay, so we are aware of it. With our agile development system with this function, we have put out where there is significant function now and released it. And we do have more function that we want to add in the future. So we'll see how, that's in our backlog now. All right, so where were we? We were talking about recommended. Okay, so what do we have here? Let me go back to the prior screen. Okay, so this is what's happening under the covers, right? It's going to the IBM recommended, it's doing the Broadcom recommended, it's doing the BMC recommended, and it's telling you, excluding the PEPTFs unconditionally. Okay, so it says, you know what? I found some recommended fixes that I'm going to put on in this target zone. They're ready to be installed. Let's go to the next. Okay, so now we're continuing on this timeline just as we saw before. So what we're doing is we're doing an applied check. We're trying to look at the missing requisites and the holds. Again, I'm going to click on the next down here. And again, and it continues on the same path with the corrective stall we've seen. Then we get the holds that we've seen before. You target the holds, now I'm going to resolve them, or I'm going to resolve them later, or I don't want you to put this one on because this one has a hold I can't deal with right now. So this is all the same path that we saw before for corrective. That is install recommended. Okay. So far, so good on the chat. Okay, so the last use case is install functional. So this is where I'm on the primary panel of software update. I select my software instance and I select my target zone. And so now I'm going to have the use case of this last one here, install functional. So what's install functional going to do? Well, it's going to have a different type of apply check, right? It's going to look for fixed cats here. So it's going to go into the global zone. It's going to see what fixed cats you've got there. It's going to see what fixed cats that have PTFs that you don't have applied. And again, we're assuming that you have all of the latest enhanced hold data received in the global zone. So we have all of the latest fixed cat information. Okay, so it's working to gather that information and it says, yep, here you go. I found these fixed categories that have updates that haven't been put into that target zone. Here is the selection of those fixed categories. So in this way, we will show you every fixed category that you could have PTFs, one or more PTFs to put on for. And we'll see here in this example, we had 3 fixed cats. that had fixes that were not into the target zone. We are displaying these to you. You can pick one or more of these kind of fix cats. So again, this might be the use case of I'm going to install Z15, let me put all the Z15 PTFs on. So I would do the manual receive of the enhanced hold data, get the latest fixcat information that I can on my global zone. Then I would go in software update and I would say, install functional. I want to see what Z15s. And here might be the case where I select all of the Z15 fixcats that I had. All right, so where we are. Now we're back to the timeline. Where are we going? We're doing the preparing updates. What does that really mean to us? That means we're doing an apply check. And from then on, it really is the same path as the install corrective or the install recommended that you saw before. We're going to look at holds. You're going to put the holds, now resolve later, or exclude the fix, all of that, then another apply check to do, the summary. Now I'm going to do the actual apply, change the updates. Here's the holds that you told me to remind you about. And then here's the summary. So really, it's all the same. And it's really rather rote. Once you know what kind of an update you want to put on, really through that timeline, it just all looks the same. For the functional update, behind the scenes, what's happening is you can see here that the fixcat category that you have selected, you may or may not have known this, but fixcats, the PTFs are assigned the source ID of that fixcat, and that way we can apply it. So here we have an apply of the source ID of the one that you've selected. Of course, use a group extend. And so you can see how this goes. So this is exactly what it might look like if you put it in the batch job. All right, so let me stop right here before we get to additional functions. Anything else? I know we're going to talk about the global zone and receiving information. We're going to talk about that one in a second. I think it's probably right now. Okay. Actually, let's get to the resume. Okay, so the question before came is, how do I save and I resume? And we understand that. Let's say that you're in the middle of a recommended install and you've started to look at the holds and it's lunchtime. You want to go to lunch, fine. You can, you can pause the way you are so that you or somebody else can pick it up later, okay? So what you would do then is you would say save and exit, okay? And then you would hold where you were on that software instance within the timeline where you were, and you would exit out of there, and then you can resume it. How do you resume it? You go into the view updates in progress, and these would show you the software instance that are being updated, and then you would be able to continue on whichever one you wanted, and you click on resume update. One thing I did want to point out here is in this type column, you might see an F, R, or C, and that stands for functional, recommended, or corrective. So what I can tell from here is that on this date, I was at the preparing updates step on this software instance in this zone on this particular instance. And if I clicked resume on that one, it would say, okay. But you know what? If you've received any new hold data since then, it's probably best that I go back and I rerun the last completed step again so that I can incorporate that new hold data. Do you want me to do that? Yes or no? And that's the click box here. And then you can resume. Okay. So again, this is also if you are assuming that you've got new hold data coming in outside of software update, that would be the way to do it. Let's say also, I want to look at any completed or canceled software updates that I had. I can go into show completed updates, and then I can see the status. I had several canceled, some were completed. So I can see, a list of what has been the history of what has been happening in software updates with these software instances. And again, here's that type field, and I can see a bunch of nice selection of FRs and Cs that are coming in here. Also, I can download here with this little download button. I can download and save all the output onto my workstation in a zipped format. And again, it's all the output, all the holds, or just the post-install holds that I have to send off to somebody else. One thing that I like to do is I like to add a little description. And you may have seen on some of the slides that I showed before that in the description, it didn't have anything there. I kind of like to add a description because that's just me for a lot of these updates. I like to see, kind of what's going on. So if you click on edit notes, it'll let you edit this field right here, and then you can put, what did it say, 140 characters. So it's long enough for a tweet. You can put that in there and then click on save. And then when you hover over it, you'll see that there's this little quote box. If you hover over it, it'll show you what you had saved in there. So if you had a little note, especially if you're doing a note in progress, you could put a little message in there if you'd like, which I think is good. The last thing before we talk about the global zone a little bit more is settings. So if you click on settings, you can see the settings for each one of the systems that you have within your topology and the specific value, because we do need some temporary data sets for processing in software update. So you can see, you can specify the dataset name prefix or the volume or the storage class that you need for that. And the values here are saved per system per user. Okay, so if I'm MWally on PEV 171, that would be one set of settings, but if I'm MWally on NP5, I would have a different set of settings. So they're per user per system that we see there. And again, we do need some temporary data sets. SMPE will handle the allocation and the deletion of them during that operation. So you don't have to handle anything, just tell us where you want the temporary allocation to be done. All right, so I think if I talk about this more, I'm probably going to put this first in the chart, but we finally got to the point where I wanted to talk about the global. First, let me look at this chat. Is there a new plugin to define for software update? I would encourage you to go back to the presentation on how to set up software update, where it's a task for software management. It's not a new plugin, it's part of a task of software management. So if you have software management define, and you go through the other setup tasks that you have, like permission and IKJ TSO setup and things like that, then you will have the new task for software update. So one has software management defined. You're good, you got that part. You just need to finish up the hold action that is also in the slide in the presentation for software update. So you're close, Just put the PTFs on, follow the hold action, or you can also get to the slide that I had in here, which had all the items in it. Okay, now let's talk about the global zone. And right now we do assume that you have got your global zone very up to date. Okay, we want it up to date with all the enhanced hold data. We want it up to date also with the PTFs that you have there as well. Okay, and the reason why we are coming in from this position is that we have been saying for a long time that the best practice is to use an SMPE receive order in order to acquire that hold data and the fixes nightly or weekly or on some regular basis with automation or some other regular cadence that you have. I know on my systems, I use cron and I do a receive order every single day for the latest enhanced hold data. And I have another cron job that I use in order to receive PTFs into the global zone every single day as well. So with that in mind, because we were relying at least upon this first iteration, that the best practice was being used by folks, that they had the hold data and they had the PTFs in the global zone, that's why software update is starting with not doing a receive. Okay, so that's why we did the assumption that we did. This is the first iteration of the product. We have heard from many people that they want to be able to have software update go and do the receive order. We understand that as a requirement. We have heard it. I think it is on RFE if you want to go vote on that as well, so that we know from our backlog which ones are higher priority. Let me go into the chat again. Also, I did want to mention that IBM, as well as many leading software vendors, they do support SMPE receive order back to their location to receive their enhanced hold data and PTFs as well. So do contact your other vendors, because this interface, the receive order interface, using their information to go back to their server is available through other software vendors as well. So this is a good thing to do. All right, how do you apply user mods, or did I miss it? Well, you didn't miss it. When you go back to install Corrective, you just put the user mod name. If the user mod is received in the global zone, you can put the name of the user mod there. So if it's like exit01, if that's the name of your user mod, when you go over, let me just go back in time a little bit. So on the corrective path, if you put the name of the user mod here, let me go back on the corrective, sorry. I went too far. Right there. Enter update names. Put your user mod name right there. That's how you would do it, your Sysmod name as well. Okay. And then for Juan, while I'm back here, I just wanted to say when I set up for software management, this is the list of things you need to do, Juan. So I just wanted to point that out in the presentation. Okay, another question is, do we have options such as redo, group? No, you have no control over the apply command at all. I showed you what we're doing in the background. If you don't like it, that's fine. You don't have to use software update. If you wanted control over the apply, you should be running a batch job yourself, okay? Because we're doing this because we're trying to make this simple. We know the best options that we want to do for the apply for these 3 use cases that we have. And we have selected the best apply options that we have for these 3 particular use cases. If you want to tweak this or change this, this is really not the solution for you. You should be using batch jobs and you should be using the options that you want. I would ask you why you would want to be doing something like a redo. If that is the case, we probably are in a recovery situation where a PTF didn't install correctly. And this software update is not meant to be a correction of a misinstalled fix that you might have had to modify or change or do in a redo. That is a rather experienced and complicated and detailed way, and that's not what today's version of software update does. I am never a fan of an apply redo because it has very especially if the Sysmods have JCLN, you could be getting into a lot of trouble if you don't know exactly what's happening. So that is why we don't have that within software update. I've shown you the apply statements just so that you can see what we're doing, but you are not able to modify those apply statements at all. Okay, so that was a very good question. If you find yourself into doing a redo or a group or changing those control statements, I would kind of ask what the situation is. It sounds like it's a very complicated, almost more of a problem that you're trying to get yourself out of, maybe even under the direction of IBM service. So this is not the case for that particularly to be used. Okay. Elizabeth, so I always have to receive outside of zOSMF. Yes, that's the way that it is today, and it is best practice. We really want you to use the receive order for the whole data and the fixes at a regular interval. I like it nightly, and I do it nightly because then everything is just there and I never have to worry about it. And if I do it in an automated manner, it doesn't really need to be done in software update because I've already done it nightly. Will zOSMF keep track of which user mods are applied to which products and on which systems? It absolutely will, Juan. If you go back into the completed installation information at the very end where I have a list of everything that it's done, you can see all of the updates there. Let me get back, it's near the end here. And show completed updates right here. This is where you can see it here. Also, and I had the other screen, someone asked at the other session, back in software management, so this is the different tile on the desktop, how do I query a PTF between many software instances? So let's say I have, here I just selected 4 software instances, actions, maintenance reports, Sysmod search. So I could search this one Sysmod. I could put it here, anything I wanted, and then search, and it would search through all of those software instances. And so it's just searched in these global zones, these target zones, all of them through here. If I wanted to, I could expand all, and I could see if that fix was found in any one of those target zones. So that's how easy it is. Oh, I'm not showing that part of my screen. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. Let me close it again. Okay, so back in software management, I hope you can see this now. The question came up before, how do I look at a Sysmod? So this is back in software management. This is not software update. If I wanted to look at a PTF, I could select one or more or everything of these software instances I have. Actions, maintenance. Here's the end of service, by the way, which I love. Here's Sysmod search right here. Hopefully you could see this. I put the PTF I want here, whatever it is, search. Okay, so what it's doing is it's going to search in all of these software instances, all of the target zones. And what I can do is I can see if that PTF was found in 1 or 2 clicks. You saw how fast I did it on all of these target zones. And all I have to do is look here. Nope, not found in any of these target zones. I could do that for my entire enterprise. You saw how fast that was. Elizabeth said, I do a redo on Tuesday of a user mod instead of going to bother to do restore, reject, receive, and apply. Okay, another option is if you have a user mod is to put, you know, however you wanted to do it, but if that's how you've got it and the redo is the best option for you, that's good. You could do the restore and then put it on through this tool too. So that's fine too. Usually with user mods, if you've packaged them in the way that you know that they're packaged, so that you're not like removing a part in a user mod and you just do a redo, you get into problems when the content of user mods are different, meaning that the higher level of the user mod has removed a part and now you're just apply redoing and the residue from the other part from the other user mod is still there. So that's why redos can be very dangerous unless you know really how the packaging and how SMPE intricacies work. And especially if that user mod has JCLN, it gets even more complicated. So it sounds like you know what you're doing with the packaging, and that's great. It sounds like maybe the batch job for you and that user mod when you're going to do a redo probably is the best for you. You know, with somebody that's maybe new to the platform, maybe doing a restore and then having them go through the corrective path might be good. Restore is also something that, you know, we have been thinking about for software update. Maybe we want to have it do a restore. So these are just items that are in our backlog. You know, we still have a lot of more iterations in order to do on this. So I can see what you're doing, Elizabeth. Sounds great. Redo is final is probably very good for a user mod. Just make sure that you have the packaging okay on the redo when you apply a user mod again. And I'm concerning about part composition. That's where I know that we've gotten into trouble before. All right. Can you provide a link or some instructions on how to get to the RFE website? The RFE website is on DeveloperWorks. And so you can find it on DeveloperWorks. I can, if you want to email me, I can give you the location where that is. I'm hoping you're seeing my slide now. I wanted to just finish with this presentation. I know I'm a couple of minutes over. Anna's probably going to pull me off in a second, but I did want to get to the summary chart. And the summary chart is, again, targeted for less experienced ZOS users so that they can do PTF installation in a very simplified manner for the most common use cases they have. The function rolled back to 2.3. Here's the APAR for it. The PTFs are in the beginning. If you want to click on this content solution, it'll tell you pretty much what I've told you in this
Marna,
presentation.
sorry, we don't see your screen at the moment.
Oh, I'm sorry. A new share. I'm sorry. I'm not such a good person with sorry, I'm sorry. I'm not such a great person with different sharing. Okay, so again, here's the APAR number for the folks that went off in 2.3. This is just a reminder that you can go to this content solution website and learn a lot more about software update, which is really what this presentation, it kind of is based on that. So you get information from there. About the RFE, you can go and use it on DeveloperWorks. Email me if you want the exact RFE number. I can send that to you. It's a popular RFE, so go vote on that if you want. Please do your session feedback. I know I'm a little bit over, but hopefully I've given you some information. I'm going to take back within development that, again, you guys are a set of users that also want the receive order automated again. I'll take that back. We've heard that several times. So I've got that from you guys. Thank you very much. So 2BG is our conference feedback, and please do a charitable donation if you can. And again, my email's on the cover, so let me get back to that. Oh, so please email me if you can, and I know Anna's going to turn off the recording now, but I just want to make sure my email's here. Thank you so much for staying over. I'm sorry I went a couple of minutes over. I'm hoping that you guys got information that you can see to try this, and I want you to put on the PTF and give it a try.
Marna, thank you so much for your great session, and everybody, I'm sure, will echo what
Well, we know we have more to do, but this is first iteration, okay?
Yes. Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who joined us today. Thank you, Marna. Have a great remaining of your day.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.